Hi, welcome to NAR Fellowship. Today I have Caleb Woodbridge, right? Am I
Woodbridge,
saying
yes.
Woodbridge? And we are both part of the One Foot in Rabbit Room and One Foot in This Little Corner. And we'll go more into that. Today we're doing not learning, but a creative chat. And so I'm really thrilled to have Caleb on NAR Fellowship. He is a freelance writer and editor, and he is also has a podcast, Imaginative Discipleship, and his Substack is Bigger on the Inside, and we'll have links in the show description for people who want to follow and find out what he's actually involved with a lot of things like I am, and so this is going to be an exploratory, just us getting to know each other better, and we're really looking forward to it. Thank you so much. And so we're doing across the sea kind of thing. I'm from the U.S. and he's from Wales, and so here we are. So thank
Yeah,
you
no,
very
it's
much, Caleb, for being on NAR Fellowship.
thank you for having me. No, it's really good to connect. Seeing you a lot on some of the same Discord servers and different conversations and things. So it's nice to connect for a proper conversation. I'm really looking forward to it.
Me too. So why don't we start off sharing like our little, how did we fall into the rabbit room and then this little corner? So maybe I'll let you, since you're my guest, go first and share like which came first, rabbit room or the little corner, or does it kind of overlap?
Yeah, so I think it was Rabbit Room for me, and I think probably the way in for that was um, via a website called Christ and Pop Culture, and I was a supporter and subscriber there, and they had a members only Facebook group, but it had quite an American skew, and that was a community I was involved with online. But out of that, there was quite a bit of overlap in terms of interest with Rabbit Room stuff. So I was hearing about musicians like the Grey Havens and Andrew Peterson and so on through there. So I think first of all, I was a really big fan of the Grey Havens. I really love their music. They're very they're sort of folksy, but they've got a lot of storytelling in their lyrics. There's a lot of references to Tolkien and Lewis and stuff like that. So I was really digging that. And then I was getting a lot of Andrew Peterson recommended on the algorithm because I was into those things. And then I sort of discovered, oh, he's doing all this interesting things, and eventually went along to the Hutchmoot UK. I was aware of the one that happened in 2019, but wasn't able to make it. And then when they had another in Oxford again post COVID, I think it was 22 or so, I went to that, and I've been going back to Hutchmoot UK ever since. And there's a Hutchmoot inspired community, the UK Moot one, which is a kind of UK online offshoot, unofficial grassroots thing. And so that's I'm part of a writers group with that, and part of the Facebook and Discord groups with that, and lots of friends from Hutchmeet who I stay connected with in that context. So yeah, so there's a sort of mainline Hutchmeet Rabbit Room. I'm a member. I've got my mug. Um, Part of that Facebook group. I've written for their website and stuff, but also the sort of um, there's a UK community dimension that's got a little bit of a life of its own. So that's the Rabbit Room side of things.
Cool. Wow, that's awesome. I actually found out of it through friends. Um, a couple of my friends who we nicknamed the Overlord and the Overlady. Um, they are the kind of the head people of our geek family, and we a group of friends that hang out on Friday nights, and there's a mix of believers and non-believers, and and the overlord and overlady have done seminary stuff, and she was involved with Rabbit Room, and knows both the Petersons very well. Um, she's kind of their, wing feather expert because she knows all
Uh,
the little details and stuff. She helped run the wing feather forum back when it was
oh,
online,
fantastic.
and she was known and nicknamed Madam Seidler from the
Mhm.
wing feather series, and because she's a librarian, and she had a home library. She was a church librarian for a while, and then that moved on. And but Madame Seidler from the Wing Feather Saga is a librarian in the fantasy world, and so that's kind of a fun thing. Um, but so they're heavily involved in the Hutchmoot um, uh, scene. They go and just volunteer and go there and volunteer and help out and everything like that. And they back in COVID happened, they had they had to not do the in-person meeting conference,
Mhm.
and so they came up with this brilliant idea of Hutchmoot Homebound, and that was my first entry into the hospitality and the arts and everything. I was a member of the Facebook group for a long while. I still am. I just don't go there very often. Um, and it was really fun. We it was October in Colorado and it was cold and windy, but we had everything outside to be safe, and the TV and everything was, was wires going to the house and everything. We're in the backyard, and so we did all these crafts and things. We watched the different sessions and whatnot, and we had a lot of fun. We were cold, but we had fun. Um, the end of the Sunday after Sunday, what the church service um, uh, session is kind of wrap up everything and whatnot. There was a little pop-up tent that they had covering all the gear and stuff, and it went flying half over the neighbor's fence, and so
Oh,
we
no.
grabbed it so it would fly away. So that was my intro to Hutchmoot Homebound, and so that tent flying in the wind was kind of legendary. Fortunately, we didn't have that again, but
Yeah.
a few years we had it again, and then they were finally able to go back to Hutchmoot again when it was back in session. So we didn't have the Hutchmoot Homebound for like 1 or 2 years, and then it came back again because um, our overlady is very enthusiastic about sharing all this wonderful stuff with us. And so I learned about Andrew Peterson and Pete Peterson and the Rabbit Room through them, and so it was very friendship oriented. I even,
Yeah.
I can talk about a little bit. Is I mentioned Rabbit Room as one of the communities that I was a part of in the Writers of Meaning book, and we can talk about that later.
Mhm.
But so that's kind of my foray into writing. I never became a member. I'm kind of on a limited budget,
Yeah.
but I enjoy the free community, and I saw the progression from the website, the forums, and then to Facebook, and then the Substack. And I subscribe to the Substack because I really enjoy, reading the different articles and stuff and seeing what's going on. Someday I might go out there. I don't know if I'm, have the wherewithal and the budget to do so. But
Yeah.
I'm
No,
kind of
no,
curious to
it's
see the fireplace for myself.
yeah,
Porcelain
I'd love
manor.
to make it to I'd love to make it to Northwinds Manor at some point.
Yeah.
I think yeah, I uh I met Andrew Peterson for the first time because the church I was in Cardiff, he's quite good friends with the pastor there, with Dave Gobbett, and so um, we during lockdown, I think it was particularly Andrew Peterson's music that we listened to over and over that really helped get us through those dark winter nights where we were just stuck at home.
Mm.
Um, and so it was really fantastic when he came to Cardiff and he did a concert at the church. But also, it was really nice because um, uh, Dave, the pastor, he arranged a just an informal time for creatives in the church to come and chat to Andrew in his home, and so it was really nice to have that opportunity to connect
Oh,
and hear a bit more about him in that sort of informal setting. So I've obviously run across him since then at the Hutchmeet events here in the UK and stuff. But yeah, no, it's I think it's a really uh, it's really encouraging to see Christians with a positive vision for the arts and for creativity. I think that's often been neglected. Some of the books that I've edited are sort of on that theme. Um, this is one Ted Turnow and Ruth Naomi Floyd wrote Imagination Manifesto, which is a sort of condensed version of a bigger book by Ted about arts and imagination. But I was like, oh, be really good to sort of cash this out in a more short and sharp way. This is the book to give to the busy pastor who needs convincing that um, uh, or needs helping to understand how to better support um, arts and creativity and the sort of theological rationale of why to do so. Um,
yeah.
so um, so yeah, so I think it's good that there are um, different communities, different networks that are bubbling up, and Rabbit Room being among those, just in terms of encouraging and nurturing that um, overlap of faith and imagination and creativity.
Mm. I remember we used to work in media production decades ago. My dad, my brother, and myself, and my mom was my dad's writing partner. Um, and we worked in media production, film, video, audio. You know, we did radio show for 9 years. But when we did go to church back in the day, um, they there's a whole story I could tell you about my dad doing a skit group called the Book of Acts, and that was a great evangelistic thing that he ended up doing, and it was just creative work, and it connected with so many people, and they traveled and
Mm,
stuff. Um, but sadly, what happened is when he really needed people to talk to and people to help him, nobody in the church was there for him. And so he
mm,
became disillusioned. It wasn't like he was doing it to get people to help him kind of thing. It's just he really needed help and felt deserted by the community. Um, and
I'm
we
sorry to hear that.
never became not Christian. We just, you know, moved on and, did other things. But, there was back in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't much support or understanding in um, in the church about creative people. They didn't know what to do with us.
Yeah.
It's like easy to lecture us about, we should do stuff that builds the kingdom, and then a carpenter or a construction worker is working on a liquor store. So it's like double standard kind of thing. It's like, well, we need to make money too. It's like, so, but yeah, so I I've seen the evolution of the shift in the Christian culture, understanding the necessity of bringing the arts back into the flock, and instead of being the black sheep. And Protestant churches tend to focus more on music, and the Catholic and Orthodox churches tend to focus more on artistic, like iconography and stuff. And I
Mm,
understand now that it's veneration and not worship and stuff, but I feel like I'm a Protestant, so I'm like, I don't know, but whatever. I understand the difference now. It's okay. But like, but art has always been there in the church history since the beginning, trying to connect us to the good and the beautiful and the true. And that's
Mm,
become a little more, uh, the church has become a little more culturally aware. They don't understand the history behind it all. And, it can lead to distraction and all that kind of stuff. And most people are just regular folks. So it's kind of like the equivalent of expecting everybody to be a computer programmer when they're not. It's like, I don't know how to do the thing.
yeah,
Um, but
yeah.
it's kind of
I
nice, the satellite um, organizations that have come about, because we actually met Peterson, Andrew Peterson, twice, I think, through the Aslam Society here in Colorado
ah,
Springs, and they brought
hmm,
people in from the Rabbit Room and stuff like that. Malcolm Guite and
yeah,
Andrew Peterson and quite a few other people. And there's one of the main gals that connected has a magazine who's I'm blanking on the name. I apologize. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's a publication and but it's very Rabbit Room inspired. And so there's little groups of people doing lots of different things. It's not just Rabbit Room. It just
yeah,
Rabbit Room just kind of came together organically from all these musicians. Like we should help each other, and that spirit of collaboration rippled out into different little groups that are connected, and friends with Rabbit Room and all in the Aslam Society, and then the people that in England and Wales and stuff. So I think it's really great. It's kind of because we have thoughts and concerns that the mainstream secular artists they don't care. how do we how do we stay true to God without not? It's like for me, one of the things is wrestling with fame and humility. We have
mm,
to build a platform according to the experts. But how do we not get consumed with, you know, uh, arrogance, uh, climbing the ladder? It's like how do we ground ourselves when we're doing this? There's nothing in the Bible about, everything's like don't do that. I'm like, well, we need to do this. We're creative people. Like, how does what needs to work? How do we balance that? And I would love to find other people like yourselves that I could talk to about, humility and fame and building the platform and, doing the creative work and having you know, more than just, trying to become a star. It's more like creating stuff to quench a thirsty world. I
yeah,
apologize. You had
yeah.
thoughts. Let me let you go on.
Yeah, no, I really feel that tension just in terms of I'm in the process of um I've got a book proposal that's under consideration with a couple of publishers that's kind of emerging out of themes from Bigger on the Inside, imaginative discipleship about imagination and meaning making in the contemporary context and trying to speak into those things. And of course, part of making the case for the book to the publishers is sort of making the case that I'm a sort of up and coming as a as a writer, as a speaker, and all of that kind of thing, and just trying to be able to show my numbers in the best possible light. And I do find that a bit discomforting. And I think yeah, just that tension of okay, well. I've got a message that I believe is helpful and valuable, and in terms of speaking into the quest for finding a better sense of meaning in today's culture, in terms of helping Christians, where I think even as Christians we can feel a meaning gap between what we say we think in our heads and how we actually feel and live day by day. So trying to speak into that. So it's more about sharing the message and ultimately pointing to the gospel as the true myth and Jesus as the true hero, is what in the end I want to be doing. But also there's lots of steps along the way, and sometimes it is having an open conversation, things like the estuary conversations, where it's just having the space to not have a directive conversation where I'm trying to steer people to a particular point, but just to be listening well to where people are and engaging with those questions, and maybe that leads to sharing. From a Christian perspective, how I see those questions, but maybe it is maybe that's not the place where other people in the conversation are at, and just being responsive to that and trying to engage with people in a patient human way, which is meeting them where they are rather than jumping to that. So but yes, but yeah, that's a getting off onto a bit of a tangent already, but coming back to that platform thing, it's also then hard just on the one hand wanting to be able to speak as a Christian and to speak to issues in the church, but also to be engaged in a wider cultural conversation around meaning and meaning making, and to be able to speak as a Christian, but in a way that's kind of not just the equivalent of marching into the room, standing on top of a chair and going, "Everyone listen to me, I've got the right answers, this is the truth," type thing, which even if I believe, I do believe it to be true, of course, otherwise I would believe it, but that's not the way to engage in a constructive conversation, a constructive dialogue with things. But yeah, it's very easy to get pulled or pigeonholed or pushed in one direction or another, to feel like I have to pick a lane of like either Christian or sort of speaking in a very generalized, de-Christianized sort of way. So just there's lots of tensions, I think, to navigate as someone who, as a person of faith, is trying to engage well and to think about platform, think about ego, to stay humble, but still feel, oh yeah, there's something worth sharing here.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack there. So, um, let's talk about estuary a little bit, because some of my people are not familiar with right of the meaning or, um,
Hmm.
estuary. Um, but some people from the little corner will be watching this and like, oh yeah, that's cool. So how, what was your journey like into the little corner?
Yeah. Um, so um, I think uh, in terms of, so it's worth saying that I now run a estuary group here in my local community in um, Pontypridd in the South Wales Valleys. It's quite small. It's not many people it pulls in, but we always have good quality conversations in the little group that we have. An estuary being the sort of format for conversations to go a bit deeper, that gives people space to put questions on the table, to sort of pitch something, and then as a group we vote on or discuss what we want to talk about, and then we dive in and get into that. And the thing that sort of drove me towards that was my background with L'Abri Fellowship, which is a Christian community. There's ones in different parts of the world now. There's The first was in Switzerland, started by a Christian pastor, apologist, and writer, Francis Schaeffer, in the 1950s. But they have lunch table discussions that are quite similar in spirit to Estuary, and I always really enjoyed those and found those very enriching from the times that I've spent at the English library primarily. Um, and so I was then really intrigued to hear about estuary because I'd been trying to work out, oh, well, how can I translate that into a setting outside L'Abri? Because there's all sorts of things about the way L'Abri is set up that kind of subtly cue up the right kind of environment. So those meals are taking place within a community where there are certain norms already established. And so they tend to work well. And I was like, if I just started trying to run a L'Abri lunch discussion with a group of friends, just the dynamics of it would be a bit weird. It needs a little bit more structure to be portable. So when I sort of saw estuary, I was like, perfect. This is like the portable version of a L'Abri lunch table discussion. But I came to it. So I think in around 10 years ago, I was sort of aware of the Jordan Peterson phenomenon and found that very interesting from the point of view of here's a guy who's articulate, who isn't a Christian, but is sort of taking the Bible seriously, and lots of people are interested in what he has to say about that. And so I listened to a bit of that, and I ended up slightly randomly winning some tickets to go and hear him speak in the O2 Arena in London, sort of really massive event. So I wasn't like a massive devotee or whatever, but I was like, oh well, I'll go along and see what this guy's about. And so I think there's various things where, particularly in the kind of direction he's gone, being very much more leaning into like a certain political rhetoric and stuff. I'm less interested uh, in that, and there's maybe a lot more where I would want to put a lot more distance with him. But I think what intrigued me about him was the way that he was opening up questions about meaning, looking at the Bible, looking at stuff in a way that people were interested in and were resonating in beyond where the church was traditionally reaching. So for all of the uh, disagreements and caveats and warning signs I might put around Peterson, there is a lot that I think is interesting, and yeah, I think it was good that it was part of this sort of vibe shift as space seemed to begin to open up a bit more to talk about um, uh, talk about faith, talk about philosophy, talk about the meaning crisis in different ways, and for there to be good conversations happening about that in a fresh way. So yeah, I think off the back of that, I became aware of Paul van der Clay, which then connected me to estuary. But actually, the first time I took part in an estuary conversation was at Hutchmoot UK, because a guy called John Lumgare ran it as a session, and so it was off the back of that and the sort of cross pollination of these different streams. I was like, oh yeah, I definitely want to go away and start one of these in my own setting now.
Very cool. So is the gentleman John was doing estuary at a rabbit room event?
Yes, yeah. So he
That's so
he did
cool.
that did that as a seminar at Hutchmeet UK. So
That's cool.
he sort of introduced it and then ran. I think it was probably a slightly abbreviated version, but because we ended up splitting into two groups, I ended up sort of leading the second group just because having taken part in the L'Abri stuff, I was kind of at least a bit more confident in participating in that sort of space. So I sort of ended up um, uh, at least semi-leading one on my first time out, which was funny.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, did you have a nice mix of people, or believers and non-believers, or was it mostly believers or religious people, or
so
what was it
so
like for you
at
guys?
yeah, at Hutchmeet it was mostly Christians
Hmm.
or had a I don't know because it's like you wouldn't necessarily ask straight off, but it was definitely heavily skewed that way that it was either Christians or people um, from a Christian context, I guess, wherever they were personally, they at least felt comfortable being in a faith-based space. Um, um, but yeah, I mean, with running S3 locally, it's been a real mix. I've had um, atheists, had sort of spiritual but not religious, had Buddhist, had some Christians. So it's been really good in terms of having a space for unpacking really different points of view quite often. Um, and yeah, I think I've actually there have been once or twice where it has ended up being all Christians, and then that sometimes means that you maybe go into topics that you wouldn't go into otherwise, or you approach them in a slightly different way. But I always find it slightly disappointing. Not that I mean, I love having more in-depth conversations with Christians as well, but I think there's just I particularly enjoy the um, exchange that happens when it's people coming from a wider range of opinions. It just pushes you in different ways to think outside your normal boxes.
Yeah, it really does. A couple of the people three of the people connected to the Write of the Meaning book, they are in estuaries or actually facilitate estuary, and they really love it. And I just don't do it myself. I just have nobody around me to do it with. Um, and but I try to promote it as part of promoting the book. It's it's basically it's a way for people of different viewpoints to have good faith conversations with each other
Yeah,
that normally it is for people who hate the small talk. This is not small talk. This is the media stuff, and so it's like, oh, okay, let's sink our teeth into this stuff, and it's a really good small groups directed conversation that doesn't allow it facilitates people who are quieter to speak more, and it facilitates people who dominate conversation to just listen more. And it's just a nice orchestration of facilitating conversation and stuff. And so I've seen the fruits of it in the corner, and I want to promote it as an antidote to chaos, as John Van Donk wrote about. Um,
yeah.
and the cancel culture, the antidote to cancel culture, and to actually facilitate that. Um, have you ever heard of Diane Gleiser, who wrote Bandersnatch?
Oh yes, yeah. I've come across
And
that about the friendship between Tolkien, Lewis, the Inklings as an
yep,
example of community. Yes.
she has a thing on her website, and she's done like 3 or 4 lectures on it, on the concept of intellectual hospitality.
Oh
And
yes.
have you heard about intellectual hospitality?
Um, yes, that definitely rings a bell.
Let
Yeah,
me explain a little bit for people who might not have heard me talk about it in other videos. Um, Basically, it's a term from the 1800s, 1880s, I think, that is from an academic background of actually having good faith conversation with people you vehemently disagree with. And it came
yeah,
from academia. Something good came from academia. I know I've gotten into the thing where I used to hate academia, and like with Vervaeke and Jordan Peterson and other people who are great thinkers, they're thinking outside the box, and they're thinking above the culture war stuff. They're really kind of like wrestling with the hard the hard questions and things, dealing with meaning crisis and all this other stuff. And it's not about left versus right all the time. Um, and intellectual hospitality is the spirit of actually really listening to someone you vehemently disagree with and trying to understand why they believe what they believe. And
mm,
Diane and her daughter vehemently disagree about many different controversial topics. And one day, her daughter says, "I vehemently disagree with what you believe, but I love why you believe what you believe." And that
mm.
was really heartening. And if we can get past the "I'm right, you're wrong, you're an idiot, you're a moron, or you're evil incarnate" um, perspective, um, and really just try to understand where people are coming from, not the bad, not the bad actors, but the people who have good character, who disagree on important things. I'm not talking about the shysters and the manipulators and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about the real good faith people who are on opposite sides of the different controversial whatever that might be. And I was like, there's deep-seated reasons why they believe what they believe. Deep-seated reasons why I believe what
Mm.
you believe, what you believe. It's like where are people coming from? It's like
Yeah, yeah.
try to understand. I mean, we may not agree to, uh, we might agree to disagree, but it's like we're supposed to love our enemies. Like, let's try to do
Yeah.
that. Let's try to really do that. It's like, and there's just some people you'll never get along with. I mean, Jesus did not get along with the Pharisees, who he had the most in common with. It's like, yes, you're supposed to do that, but you're doing all the stuff wrong. It's like you're obeying the traditions of man and you're violating, the laws of God. It's like the spirit of the law. And, it's
Mm.
like, he's like my role model of like, okay, yes, there is about speaking that a spade is a spade. And there is the whole thing of just understanding that people just disagree. But he was willing to go to the Roman guard, captain, or whatever he was, and heal his servant or slave, whatever the translation you read. And he's like, no, you don't have to come to my place. I know you're not supposed to come to my place. Just say the word, and I believe it'll happen. Like that's incredible faith. And
Mm.
that was, Rome was the one who ends up crucifying. It's like he's willing to do that when he knew what was going to come in the future. It's like he people have trouble. They either paint him as this wonderful, loving, patient, awesome guy, or this like, you know, turning the tables and and you know, telling off the Pharisees and making enemies left and right. It was like he was both and that's what
Mm.
we have trouble understanding is like, you know, that's where I think is a key to help people balance those is like you need to be able to articulate why you believe what you believe, and iron sharpens iron. But you're not supposed to like, put your put you know, be a freaking jerk about it. Jesus
Yeah.
Jesus walked that fine line of speaking truth to those who needed to hear it, whether they wanted to hear it or not. And then he also was very gentle and kind and forgiving were people that no one wanted to forgive and no one wanted to deal with. So it's like people either gravitate to truth and righteousness, or they gravitate to legalism, or they gravitate to all accepting kindness and gentleness and passivity. And it's like, no, we're supposed to be more balanced than that. And I think the
Y-
key is estuary is facilitating working through all that in seeing people as people, not as avatars for their ideology. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely resonate with the idea, and I think that's something where Labrie for me has been a really good model of that, because as a community they welcome in people, and in terms of offering um, space for people's honest questions, and yeah, giving honest answers or honest responses to honest questions. Um, I think something I sometimes discuss with writers as well is the idea of imaginative hospitality, because I think in terms of um, uh, telling stories as well, one of the ways in which um, one of the balances I think in terms of st- particularly for people who are self-consciously writing stuff with a Christian perspective, is how you make room in the story for other perspectives. Because I think good fiction tends to be dialogical rather than a monologue. Uh,
mm,
if you know what's the right answer to the story is, it makes it a boring story, because stories are all about tension, and there has to be a sense of capturing something of the complexity of being in the middle of life, and not always having clear answers and stuff. And sometimes Christian fiction can very much want to hone in on a very clear single message. And I
mm.
think part of imaginative hospitality is within a story to have room for there to be different voices and different viewpoints. That doesn't mean that you give them all the final say or the most decisive voice, but you have room for different readers to feel like, oh, there's characters in here whose viewpoints I perhaps resonate with, who are in the mix and in the themes of the story. It's not just one-sided. There's a kind of an exploration of the tensions inherent in certain themes, rather than it just being that. And I think that gives space to for people to feel that the story is for them, uh, even if they're not of the same viewpoint as the author. And yeah, so I think intellectual hospitality, but how you translate that into creative key is something I'm quite interested in. Um,
I'm
but
fascinated
yeah,
that you took that way, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. I have questions for you. So, is there something else you wanted to touch on before I ask you my
um,
question?
I just wanted to mention before I forget about it, I've just done a debate on the Premier Unbelievable podcast. I was debating an objectivist, and I hope that what I did is a good example of sort of engaging in the spirit of intellectual hospitality, and that it's a much more of a conversation rather than a confrontation in terms of how I approached it. Now, it's funny because I've seen mixed reactions to that. I had someone message me to say, "Oh, I thought you did a really good job of kind of having a really open conversation." Someone in the YouTube comments said that they thought it was the shallowest conversation they'd seen on the podcast. So it's like, he can't win. So but I what I hope for that, and for when I'm engaging in that kind of thing, is that genuine trying to empathize with and understand where other people are coming from. And I think that capacity to do so, and that ability to resist premature closure, is something that artists tend to be good at. I think that's why there's perhaps a resonance between spaces like the Rabbit Room and the Little Corner, is that these are spaces that thrive on nuance and on making things more complicated and just going, oh, let's make things less simple. And I think uh, it's not necessarily that people are artists or creatives, but there's a common sense of openness in terms of psychological profile that I think is yeah, a common denominator.
Mm. Yeah, that's cool. So my question was, I have a friend who um really doesn't like conflict and in her stories, and she likes more the cozy kind of stories. Um, and I I was actually I don't I'm more of a nonfiction writer myself. Right
Hmm.
now, I did fan fiction for a while, and it was it was basically really bad writing, but I was having fun, so yeah, it was not serious. But how would one create tension in something that's not violent? And so, how would someone it's like if someone wanted to write something cozy and something to relax to and something to just kind of diffuse from all the chaos in their life. They just wanted like a cozy read of cozy mystery or a cozy, fantasy or something like that. And how would they build that tension in from your perspective as an editor? What are some thoughts that you have?
Yeah, so I would say that the coziness comes from the resolution of tension rather than from absence of tension. Um, so I think one of the reasons we like um, sort of crime stories is that sense of justice in the end, that the truth comes out, justice
Mm,
is done, and there's something reassuring in that. Um, and I think, yeah, if you want something that's um, so I think um, I I think uh, you can have something that contains violence but is ultimately um, sort of cozy in that sense, in that it's a happy ending. There's clear resolution,
mm,
um, and I think you can probably have stuff that maybe is non-violent, but there's still maybe a certain kind of literary novel might not have a lot happening.
mm,
There's not a lot of change, but it's in a way where um, it there is there isn't the resolution of discord either. So it's kind of stuff is just left there,
mm,
um, and um, yeah. So I think there always needs to be some kind of tension and resolution in any story for it to be satisfying. But there's many other different types of um, tension than violent tension.
mm,
So it might be between perception and reality. It might be between um, sort of um, relational tension in terms of and that doesn't have to be coming to blows. It can be, is this
mm,
person trustworthy or not trustworthy, and
mm,
stuff like that. The uncovering of secrets. So yeah, so I think it's finding what the appropriate kind of tension to draw the reader on and to give a sense of what's at stake here, what's being debated, what's in play, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's some people who do like stuff that doesn't have anything at all intention, but I think that's quite
yeah.
unusual. I think.
I think sometimes, so my one friend I'm thinking of, she just can't handle violence very well. It just really bothers
Mm,
her. She's just very sensitive to it, and I kind of drifted away from mainstream media. Uh, I just I haven't watched TV in like over 20 years. I periodically watched movies and stuff, but I tend to like the younger. animated stuff where I don't have to be flooded with violence and stuff in my. I tend to lean towards uh, nonfiction more. I like periodically I'll read a little adventures that are meant for young adults or something. I can handle that, but it's like I don't really want to hear these horrible you know dramas, and I'm like I can't handle this. It's like I just
Yeah.
I have enough medical stuff that we're dealing with, not like super bad or anything, but it's just chronic and it's ongoing, and my family has a lot of health issues, and we all take care of each other. Um, and my brother and I are caregivers for my mom and my sister-in-law. They have health
Mm.
stuff, and so so we have like quiet lives where I have a lot of downtime, so I can learn, I can write, I can do podcast stuff like this. Um, and but it's like the constant. It doesn't go away kind of thing. And so I know some people just want to just a break from that, but they don't want a heavy cathartic thing. They just want something, a light read or something like that. And I appreciate your answer for that. I'm like, kind of a personal question because I'm kind of curious if I actually end up writing more fan fiction or going into fiction in the future or something. And like to create the tension. Um, we it's interesting because our story does have that tension of the um, different worldviews coming into you know contact with each other and wrestling through that out and learning how to articulate oneself better and better and better and an iron sharpened iron kind of thing. And it and I'm kind of like okay, here's a like a metaphysical thing which we probably don't have the answer for because it's like for philosophers and theologians better educated than ourselves. But like, why are we drawn to conflict? Why are we drawn to tension? Why did that attract our attention so much and enthrall us when heaven and the promise of the reunification of heaven and earth is peace? And
Mm.
what what's going on with us? It's like, are we just broken, or is there something else going on that
So,
is?
so yeah. So I think if you think back to Eden, Adam and Eve are still given a mission. They're still given a task. The Garden of Eden is a particular space, but the world outside still needs to be discovered and still needs to be cultivated. There's what there's wildness outside the garden. I think at least that's my reading of Genesis, and so I think even in a perfect world, there are tensions that arise from discovery and from difficulty that don't
Mm,
require. And those things don't require sin, they don't require evil, they don't require violence. And so I think the sort of narrative drive of the new creation will not be between good and evil as it is in this life, um, but it's a way of um, thinking about human flourishing. We always want to be doing something. I mean, we want rest as well, but once once we've rested a certain amount, we'll find a hobby, we'll find some pursuit, we'll want to be making something, we'll want to be doing something, and then there's a desire to get better in that, and so I think um, yeah, so and there's curiosity as well, linking to your other theme of learning. So I think yeah, maybe the things that coziness can involve cozy storytelling if they focus on discovery, sort of investigation, learning, uncovery, and on doing hard things. And then the tension isn't between whether something bad is going to happen, but are you going to succeed at pulling off something challenging?
mm.
So
That's really a wonderful answer. Thank you so much. I was like, oh, okay,
I,
that
I,
answers that.
I,
I'm gonna.
I wrote an article about how we imagine heaven in
Ah,
response to the TV show The Good Place. Did you ever
ah,
come across this? It was a sitcom about someone who ends up in The Good Place, a sort of version of heaven, by mistake. And so she's like this really bad, sleazy person who sort of realizes that she's got there by an administrative error, and then she's trying to sort of she finds this person who's supposed to be her soulmate, only she's the wrong person, and he's a moral philosopher, and so she's like, "Quick, teach me how to be good, so I don't get found out, and so I can stay here rather than be sent to the bad place." And it's lots of fun, and it's got quite a lot of philosophy and um, in there. It's not written from a Christian perspective, so there's lots then to unpack in terms of perhaps. Yeah, what it's saying about morality and the good life and the idea of believing in an afterlife. But yeah, one of the things that one of the ideas that comes up is the idea that you'd get bored of heaven eventually, and I think. So I thought about this question of, oh well, where does the tension arise? Where does the sort of sense of purpose arise in a perfect environment?
oh. I'll look forward to reading that. Maybe you could send that to me because I would
Yeah, yeah.
really enjoy reading that. We're coming up on an hour, and I want to be respectful of your time, but I really would like to dive more into your creative work and
Mhm.
how what has your creative journey been like for you as a writer and a podcaster and everything you do?
Um, yeah, so I've always enjoyed writing stories as long as I can remember being able to write. Um, and I think when I was a teenager, I definitely was like, oh, I want to be an author. I want to write fiction. That's my thing. And so I sort of chose my university degree at Cardiff University in significant part because it had creative writing modules as part of the course that I could take. And then after university, I wrote, finished writing a fantasy novel. Um, and it's interesting looking back at it because I think that in some ways I was ahead of the curve because a lot of the themes that it was engaging with are now ones that are seem a lot more current now. So one of the ideas I was sort of engaging with was the idea of re-enchantment and the imminent frame and sort of putting that in a fantasy setting. And there's this idea that our world had got um, the sort of in the modern era that the magical world had to go underground, and there was all of this stuff kind of keeping it on the lowdown. But now the cracks in the dam were breaking, and sort of things from other worlds were breaking through, and the sort of hidden magical dimension of this world was doing there. But I was consciously sort of playing with the idea of that as a metaphor for sort of spiritual awakening as well. Um, so perhaps I should should revisit it. I mean, looking back, I can see why, in terms of quality of writing and how I was handling pacing and characters and stuff, why I didn't get anywhere with when I came to trying to get that published. But yeah, there's various narrative problems with it, but I've long had that desire. But then I sort of ended up going, okay, well, if I'm not going to be able to just go straight in and become a successful writer, what do I do with myself? And I sort of picked, well, publishing seems like a good idea because then I at least get to work with books and words and stories and ideas and stuff. So I sort of got into that, ended up going bouncing back and forth a bit between publishing and kind of digital content and marketing because I'd got experience in that. And sort of uh, computer nerd, so I can. I've been doing things like building websites and running podcasts for many years, so I sort of had a good grounding in kind of building online audiences and stuff like that. So I've done work on that side as well. I think sort of the rest of life and career and things sort of took over a bit, and it's more been in the last couple of years. Um, I had long COVID. I then had burnout. I left a sort of senior role in publishing. Been trying to work out what I'm doing with myself since, but it has given a bit more room to explore my own writing, both in terms of non-fiction and engaging in kind of cultural questions and kind of cultural apologetics or cultural commentary, but also leaning back into my creativity. So doing more, I've always dabbled in poetry, but doing a bit more in terms of writing poetry and performing poetry, and just trying to reconnect with my own creative side. I've had a I've been playing around with doing something with the King Arthur legend for a long time. I had a science fiction version of that I was doing for a bit, but I've now swung back to wanting to do something a bit more traditional. Although Malcolm Guite's beaten me to it, although in a very different genre as epic poetry than what I'd be trying to do. But I'm very excited about his Galahad and the Grail. But I'm hoping that perhaps I might at some point get a chance to focus on that a bit more. But my main focus at the moment is a book that's currently got a working title of The Meaning Gap, or Bridging the Meaning Gap, growing out of my themes in terms of imaginative discipleship and bigger on the inside, exploring the sort of philosophical and spiritual dimensions of stories and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, just wanting to engage with some of these current themes and questions and debates. So it's sort of back and forth between more of a personally creative role and helping others as an editor and as a publisher, which I do on a freelance basis as well now, but also swinging back to have a bit more room for my own writing. Currently, the non-fiction has the upper hand, but I hope to be able to return to the fiction and finish something there at some point.
Oh, I apologize about the distraction. I don't know if the noise. I live in an apartment, and sometimes the kids upstairs are very noisy and banging the floor and dropping things, and I was trying to mute it. So if it came through, I apologize for interrupting you and
No,
interrupting the audience, but
I didn't
I
hear it.
can't
I hope
control
that
that.
wasn't too. I hope that wasn't too rambling an answer, because
No, it
it's
was
like
very, it was,
once I start talking about my writing, it's like, oh,
no,
there's all
yeah,
these different
you,
things.
you're very um, multifaceted person, and I wanted to cover that, and I appreciate you
Yeah,
covering
yeah.
it and explaining that more in depth. I didn't catch everything because of noise upstairs, but so you've been writing since young age in college, and things have progressed over time. You dealt with life, and then you dealt with the illnesses and all that kind of stuff. And were you able, would you, when you were ill and stuff, were you able to write, or was it more everything cogitating in your mind?
There were certain types of writing I could still do. Well, I think car carving out more time for my own writing was part of my recovery, because I think it helped connect me back to myself, um, in ways that I'd sort of lost sight sight of, just being so caught up in trying to do these things for work and for other people, and sort of just feeling hollowed out in terms of my own thoughts and my own creativity. So I think it's been helpful for me in terms of recovering from burnout to be able to uh, reconnect with my own creativity and try and give more space for expressing that. I think writing more critically came first, and then the creativity flourished more as I got a bit better. I'd say, yeah,
Cool. I appreciate that because I know some people have different health issues and stuff, and they might, be curious about that. And
yeah.
it's
I
funny how
think
it's
the
like the tension of our world, and you probably thought about this probably a lot, is that the necessities of our lives dictates that we take care of more pragmatic, practical things that tear us away from the things that make us tick. It's like
mm,
who we are as a person in our creative outlet, especially artists and stuff. Is we're constantly being told that we need to take care of this, we need to take care of this, we need to take care of that, we need to take care of that, and it's like they're all important. Yes, we know, and it's like not we got to pay the bills somehow, and but what gives us life, what gives us vibrancy, what gives us our who we are is our being able to create. And how do you live in that tension? Is like how do you live in that? Do you make time to write like in the morning or night after your kids go to bed, or do you have certain days of the week that you work, or it's like is it kind of like snip snap every little tiny scrap of time you can and hunker down and write what you can, or what works for you?
so. So in the last few years, I've sort of been realizing I'm probably ADHD, and so I think um, it tends to go in bursts in terms of what captures my interest at the time. Obviously, there are times where I need to try and focus myself to actually finish things, and that can be a challenge sometimes. Um, but one of the misconceptions with ADHD is that it's not being able to focus, but it's more about not being able to control your focus. I can be hyper focused on the thing that my brain has latched onto as the thing that I'm interested in, but then everything else gets squeezed out. But then it once the roving um, my roving attention latches onto something else, it can be very hard to pull it back to something
Mm,
that I've started that needs finishing. Um, so so it's not so much about a lack of attention so much as a difficulty directing attention.
mm,
And so that's um, uh, for a long time I thought, oh, I can't possibly have ADHD because I can really focus on the things I'm interested in. And then I discovered that actually hyperfocus is one of the ADHD symptoms. And so, oh,
yeah.
maybe this does describe me.
Oh,
So I don't have a formal diagnosis because that's sort of long and difficult and complicated to
yeah.
go through the process of doing that. But it seems to fit quite well with my profile. Um, yeah, I think it's it is hard, and I think it's a life tension for me at the moment. It's just a constant, just trying to balance and rebalance. Okay, so am I doing enough creatively? Am I doing enough to be paying the bills and supporting the family? And I think the sort of through line for me is um, uh, I'd say in broadest terms, my sense of calling is engaging creatively and critically with culture and helping other people to do the same. And as long as I can connect what I'm doing work-wise to that, uh, maybe sometimes a bit more closely, sometimes a bit less directly, then that uh, helps me to feel that I'm doing something that is fulfilling my sense of calling, sense of gifting. Um, yeah, so I think that's the sort of big picture thing where I try to connect things to, and sometimes it's just being pragmatic. I've just got to get a job, and it might be completely unconnected, but as long as it's enabling me to have some margin left to be able to do some of that, then that's enough. Uh, but yeah, it is really hard. We live in a world that often isn't conducive to doing the things that um, we're most passionate about, that most give us a sense of fulfillment. So there's just an ongoing tension there of just trying to make the best of things in your own circumstances, I think. Um, yeah.
So that was helpful. I appreciate it. It's like really organic. I do it as I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I've been trying to cut out some of the lower quality things that take my time and attention. Like I've left Twitter, for example, and trying to be more disciplined in terms of how I engage online. It's tricky because I know that there's so many interesting things happening. There's so many interesting YouTube channels and podcasts, and I'd love to have more capacity to engage with TLC stuff online, and I sort of dip in and out a bit, but it's like um, it tends to, as with other things, it tends to go in fits and starts. There might be a particular conversation that or theme that gets picked up in the corner that I'm interested in, and I'll sort of latch onto that for a bit, and then I'll sort of pull back out again and be less engaged. But yeah, I think just trying to um, find time for deep work, as Cal Newport calls it in his writings. I found him quite helpful on the importance of focusing on the things that, um, yeah, the really meaningful productivity, and not the sort of pseudo productivity of answering as many emails as possible, because that's probably not actually move. Obviously, we all need to send some emails sometimes, but if we live in our inboxes, then that's not moving the dial on the things that are truly impactful that we could be doing.
Oh, so I probably should share with you my background a little bit. I don't know
Hmm.
if you'd had a chance to check out my website or anything like that, but I'll try to keep it short. Um, I
A
worked
little bit.
I grew up working with my dad and my brother and my mom in
Hmm.
media production for 30 plus years. And so before I graduated, I was helping him in, voiceover classes, doing catering for the snacks, the refreshments, as well as lunch and stuff like that. And
Mm.
helping with, and as I grew older, I helped with the scripts and stuff and rehearsing with the students as we recorded in the studio and all that kind of stuff. So it's like um, we did. He taught media classes, voiceover, script writing, filmmaking, that kind of stuff. And so my brother and I worked with my dad not only as production assistants and Ian did more of the. My brother did more of the. He was a video editor, graphic artist, and audio engineer. He had more of the technical background. I was more of the coordinator, where I helped as
Hmm.
a production manager, production coordinator, co-producer on the radio show that we did for 9 years. So um, it was a whole amalgam of different things that we were involved with, and some big names, mostly not. And when my dad's passed away in 2011 from a heart attack, we just
Mm.
kind of circled the wagons and settled down into a quiet life, taking care of my mom with her health issues. And we all lived together, so we weren't splitting up. Um, and then my sister-in-law got health issues, so the program that my mom was on, we got my sister-in-law on, and I kind of was figuring out like I was always a learner. I enjoyed watching, PBS growing up, and uh, Discovery Channel when we got cable, and and I kind of always kept doing learning stuff. I learned about essential oils and all this kind of stuff. And then as time went on, um, what brought me back into media stuff was actually my mom encouraged me in 2020, in October 2020, that you should write. And I'm like, I'm not dad.
Mm,
Like, he was the writer, he was the writer. He wrote
mm,
characters and dialogue, and he wrote women very well. With the femininity as well as that spark, the thing that women have that again kind of, you know, uh, kept the femininity while being, engaging characters at the same time. And I really liked that about Dad. And his dialogue was great, and I really enjoyed reading his writings. Um, and he was an actor, writer, director, and so I never thought myself as a creative one. And
mm.
so I started. I had a website, so I figured I'll just blog. It's something I can write, and I'll noodle around with my fan fiction and blog, and eventually in the writing server, uh, of the Bridge of the Meaning writing server, um, Josh ended up starting the writers group, and I'm like, yes, I would be very much interested in this. This would be cool. And so we did that for a while, and we met like once every 2 weeks, and then eventually we went to once a, once every week kind of thing. And but then Jordan came along, and we it was very organic, kind of, we chit chat a little bit, then we would work on stuff, and sometimes we would critique each other's stuff, give feedback. And the guys were really great on that. I mean, Josh is awesome at feedback. I think they're both better writers than I am. I'm just a little bit more public than they are. I had the media background. And so Jordan's the one who came up with the idea, let's do a collaborative book project to kind of
Yeah.
facilitate community here in the writer server and also Bridge of the Meaning. And I'm like, that sounds cool. I'm in. I don't know what I'm going to do, but okay. I'll write something. Um, and that was the beginning of uh, the Writers of Meaning, an anthology on community. There's a backstory behind that. Um,
Yes.
but so um, that was about 2 years. So we started in 2000. What was it? 2020. We published in 2024, I think. 2024. So 2 years from before that. Um, so we worked on it, and it was very organic, very easygoing, no egos, anything like that. Very collaborative. Try to get the word out, and we got feedback on the artwork for the cover. We got feedback on different things from the community, and but it was a little hard to like connect with people, and we didn't have a mailing list or anything like that. And so it's like it organically happened and stuff. And I had one gentleman who had health issues. His family had health issues and stuff. So he was going to be
Mm.
my marketing volunteer, and he has a YouTube channel and everything. He was a great guy. And all of a sudden he's like, can't do it. And I'm like, oh crud, I'm doing marketing. I have no idea what I'm doing. I guess I better start a YouTube channel because everybody in the corner has a YouTube channel, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. I got this sucker, um, to actually start doing live streams and stuff with people, so I wouldn't have to like show my room. It's like I'm in a small apartment. Like only place I can do it is in my room. I'm like, I'm not showing the internet my room. It's not happening. And this little green screen has been a godsend. And I uh, I got interviewed on different YouTube channels in the corner, and then I started doing podcast interviews outside the corner, and I was like, whoa, I'm doing the real thing now. I did a radio show for 9 years, but I was behind the mic. I didn't do any of the interviewing stuff. So I'm like learning how to interview and like making mistakes and being idiots and blowing my nose on camera and well, and and so it's like if I'm gonna do this, right at the meeting YouTube channel, I'm gonna do my own channel. And so I did a fellowship, which is where I talk with, other learners and learn about other learners and talk with creatives like yourself and just have creative conversation. And and they're very selfish, like Paul Van Clay is very selfish about what he does his thing. This is very selfish for me. It's like I want to talk to people. I like talking to people. I don't do SQA, but I like having conversations like this. It's like a little bit of depth and connection and let's talk about things we want to talk about kind of thing. And it's so I'm very thankful for you subscribers. You make my day, so thank you so much. Um, but so I'm a little baby channel. Like I'm still growing. Still growing, they say. Um, but it's like so I'm back in media in a small little way. And I don't do editing. I don't do, all the stuff that, I was never a technical person in media production. The most technical I got was like learning how to do websites. I can do them. They're not perfect, but they're mine. Yeah. But um but so I was like, this is my foray back into the limelight again. And and so I'm just so thrilled that I get to talk to you. It's like we are both in the
Yeah.
rabbit room and the little corner, and I'm like, this is what makes me so happy. It's like I want to talk
Yeah.
to people like this. So this is great. Um, I'm at a minute, an hour and 20 minutes, and I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, I
Um,
better finish up soon. It's
yeah,
getting towards my bedtime here in the
yeah,
UK.
you're a little late there, and I'm still listening to the kid upstairs, and I apologize for the noise, everybody. But
Um,
but
but yeah,
go ahead
no,
and go ahead.
it's no, it's been really nice to have this conversation, and yeah, and I think I mean it's interesting too because um, there's um, I think uh, as creatives, we're also people with um, other obligations to family, and those are wonderful wonderful things to have. But that can be a tension in itself. Is just the sort of desire to be doing creative things, and then there's all these practical obligations to people around us. I think ultimately it's healthy to have those, but it's not always a comfortable place to be in terms of working out the specifics of that and all that comes with that. I think for me and for my family, particularly the last couple of years, have been quite tricky just in terms of things like navigating burnout, navigating neurodiversity within the family, and just trying to work out what works for us, both in terms of like daily living and in making a living, and in finding room for creativity and other human flourishing within that. Um, yeah, so um, uh, just to wish you all the best in your own navigation of the different demands in life. But yeah, I think sometimes there's a saying that there's no diamond without pressure. So I hope that out of some of these pressures that does uh, there is a creativity that comes from constraint. And I think one of the things that goes to the whole topic at the moment around AI is that I think in our culture very often we can see difficulty and tension as being something to escape. but there is a productivity to it. Sometimes there are tensions that are just destructive, but I think, like in Estuary, that tension of people coming from different perspectives, and as long as you approach that in a spirit of openness and discovery, that is a good tension, a productive tension. You learn from it. So if I'm trying to pull something out from my own thinking to take away from this conversation, is just yeah, not to see difficulty as a bad thing. It needs to be kept in balance, but yeah, just the creative value of tensions.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I just really enjoyed our conversation today. I would love to have more conversations with you and talk more about the philosophical stuff and more about, you know, the creative journey that we take and our what our aspirations are and, you know, trying to figure out how to do it, the nuts and bolts of like building, being authors and writers and like how do we, you know, how do you build your platform? How am I building my platform? Am I doing it the wrong way? Probably.
Yeah,
Probably doing it the wrong way. But I'm like, I just wanna, I, I wanna like connect with people like yourself, Caleb, um, who I really respect and admire. And I see you posting in the Discords, both the unofficial Rabbit Room one and uh the TLC spaces, and I'm like, "You go, guy! I am so happy for you. Like, you go, you do it." You know, and it's been nice knowing that there's been a kindred spirit there. And I'm so glad that
yeah,
we
yeah.
actually talked to together. Um, One of the things I'd like to wrap up with is ask you what thoughts or words of encouragement would you have for other creatives that might be just like you and me that we don't know? I mean, there's a couple other people I know of, but you know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I think I would say um, uh, every human being has imagination and needs imagination. Not everyone is a creative, though, and so, but I think when um, everyone needs creativity in their lives, and some people can make that for themselves. And if you're one of the people who is a maker, then that's a wonderful thing, and you are doing something that everyone around you needs on some level. That's not to say that it's easy to find the exact people who are the right audience for your particular thing, but just there is a great value and human dignity um, in creating, in making. So yeah, don't lose sight of that. Keep going with it, and um, yeah, just um, I think it's interesting how there does seem to be a connection between um, sadness, empathy, and creativity. Um, this is something I think that Ian McGilchrist touches on in some of his stuff around brain hemispheres. It's the right hemisphere of the brain that's both creative and empathetic. So there is some truth to the sort of tortured artist sort of cliche, um, but I think it's often in when we're coming out of times of difficulty, then we have something to share with other people that can connect us with other people who are going through things that might be difficult as well. So um, uh, look to how your art can distill what's difficult in your life into something that can connect with others and be of comfort with others. Um, those are just some thoughts, and probably speaking mainly to myself, but that might be helpful to other people as well, I hope.
That is very helpful. That's rings true for me. It's like what what we think is personal is sometimes the most universal. And
Hmm.
and so, but thank you very much, Caleb, for joining me today for a conversation. And
Yeah, and
go
it'd
ahead.
be great to talk again,
Oh
either
yeah,
here or maybe on my podcast on the
yeah.
Matters of
Either way,
Discipleship.
I'd be
We'll
game.
see.
I'd love to talk
Yeah.
about the nuts and bolts of creative work, as well as trying to figure out what do I want to do when I grow up. That whole journey. I have a whole journey of like trying to figure that out. It's like, what am I going to do? I don't know. What am I going to do for the next 5, 10, 20 years? I have no idea. I mean,
Mm.
I know, you change and pivot, like, what
Yeah.
Peter likes to talk about in his maps of meaning thing is like, you go here, then you go there, then you go to the left and to the right and to the back 2 more steps.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not a straight journey.
There's a talk I've given on navigating a squiggly career,
Yeah,
which I've done a couple of times.
yeah,
There's a book written about squiggly careers, and
yeah,
I find that quite applicable. But yeah, there's lots more to talk about. But
yeah.
I must bid you good night. So thank you for having me, and I look
Oh,
forward to talking again, hopefully before too long.
yeah, sounds great. And thank you everyone for watching. And feel free to follow Caleb online. Put the information in the show description. And if you have any thoughts or questions, please reach out to either one of us. We'd love to hear from you. Take care. Bye bye.